heard the crazy conspiracy theory that with every massive stadium tour going on right now, that there are a lot of demonic messages being unwillfully taken in by the huge crowds every night? At Beyonce's Stadium Renaissance World Tour, there's a scary interlude that takes fans by surprise that begins with a portal hypnosis, as if to control you and draw you in. Then it gets scary when messages like, "Whoever controls the media controls the mind," pop up on the screen. Then it's terrifying when mind control messages pop up on the screen in between placements of Beyonce's face and a picture of a human in a submissive, worshipy pose. Fans were saying they were getting so uncomfortable during this part they were looking away. Second, the known suspected Satanist The Weeknd was so shameless and blatantly, for no reason, flashed Satan's name on the Jumbotron at his stadium concert. He's not even hiding his affinity for Satan at this point. It actually flashed twice. I'm making sure that you saw it. Fans and viewers often said they felt very uncomfortable at his whole run of his stadium tour because the thing just felt like one big demonic ritual that they were forced to be a part of. Before I show you the scariest one, make sure you follow so you finally know the craziest conspiracy theories about all your favorite celebrities and request who you want to see next. Lastly, there's literally a demonic chant screened by all the fans at the Taylor Swift Eras Tour during her song Willow, and they all yell, "Summon the demons." Summon the demons, bitch! Summon the demons! They do this as Taylor is literally dressed as a witch with her whole coven, and there's a ceremonial huge fire in the middle of the forest. Does that remind you of anything?
Inc. is a movie about Adrena. The movie's plot is literally centered around the monsters who work at Monsters Incorporation, where they enter through doors at night to scare them because the children's fears, specifically their screams, are used to power the city of Monstropolis. They even use ranking systems to see who can extract the most screams from these children, and they're absorbed into these
tubes.
these containers or whatever.
And they literally look like blood when they're filling up. And if you think about the tactics that are used by the elite, right, like how they acquire the best form of Adrena blood is by spiking the adrenaline in children. So you have to torture, you have to deliberately instill fear, and then you extract the blood.
This scheme to kidnap the children and extract their screams with the help of a machine called the Scream Extractor. And at full capacity, the device torturously forces the screams out of them until they meet their end.
The scary things that have been happening at the Euphrates River.
What's going on there?
Okay, so the Euphrates River is actually located in the Middle East, and it's considered one of the longest rivers in the world, but it's actually drying up. Like, it's almost completely dry. But where the river's drying up, they're actually finding caves and different structures that have been under the river this entire time. But it's actually really scary that they're finding this.
I don't get what's so scary about that.
So what's crazy is the drying up of the Euphrates River is actually written in the Bible. And in the book of Revelations chapter 9:14 through 9:15, it says, "Release the 4 angels bound to the great river Euphrates." And then it says the angels were released to kill 1/3 of all mankind.
So what you're saying is when the river dries up, it's basically the end of the world.
Yeah, and just to put that number in perspective, 1/3 of the world is 2.6 billion people. And it's just super weird that they're finding all these caves under the Euphrates River.
Sets out on her boat to find Maui, she encounters a huge thunderstorm. Moana died since the storm was too great for her to handle. The rest of the journey is done by Moana's spirit, and that is why she only meets gods and spirits along the way. It is only after she finishes her quest that Tifiti restores her spirit to her body, bringing her back to the mortal plane, which allows her to return back to her family on the island.
Wow.
And she does. She only encounters gods and spirits.
You're right about that.
The whole movie.
That's wild.
It's stunning to monitor the media's lack of interest in the whole Maui story. I've been in this business for 30 years. I'm stunned, but I'm not surprised. The incident seems to be the story here, right? But the true story, the media knows it is not allowed to tell. Is it a coincidence that the Maui police chief is the same man who was in charge in Las Vegas during that massacre that killed 58 people? Is it a coincidence that the Maui property, owned by million and billionaires, wasn't touched by the flames while homes of the locals all burned?
What she fails to also mention is how the media hasn't even once interviewed a grieving parent. Not a single parent looking for their children. Not a single interview with a child. Not a single interview with the schools.
Was it a coincidence that the largest system of outdoor emergency sirens in the world never made a sound as the fire devoured Lahaina? Was it a coincidence that at the same time, very same time, all the water was turned off? Was it a coincidence that police were ordered to block off streets and to funnel all the cars trying to escape? Think about this coincidence. That governor also signed an emergency proclamation on July 17th, 3 weeks before the fire, about housing of all things. Is it a coincidence that the government put up a black fence around Lahaina, or that the FAA grounded all drones from flying over the affected areas? Is it a coincidence that since at least 2011 there have been plans to make Maui the first smart city run by 100% renewable energy? And that it must be a coincidence then that the locals whose homes did not burn are now being evicted from their property. And of course, a total coincidence that all the fact checkers who are checking these facts, who say everything I just told you is just a coincidence, are also owned and run by BlackRock.
What's the truth in plain sight?
Smile I've ever seen out of Mark Zuckerberg.
So the song Shake It Off was about how I shed my skin every 1,000 years. And the song Bad Blood was about how I drink blood out of my Grammys.
A toast to blood!
Save some blood for Paul Rudd.
Begins at the dawn of history. The birth of the very first society begat the need for the very first secret society. A fraction of early humans were born smarter than their fellow cavemen. And if they would not listen to reason, perhaps they would listen to a higher power. And thus, the Order of the Black Robes was born.
Operating from the shadows using secret knowledge, we and our descendants kept watch over all of human history.
Well, not to point out the obvious, but fire, plague, acts. If you're watching over us, why didn't you stop these things?
Stop them. We unleashed them.
Biden accidentally confirmed that the Denver airport was no longer a mystery. For those who don't know, recently a man named Jeffrey Donson exposed the mystery surrounding the Denver airport by entering into the underground area and capturing images of animal and human experiments taking place there. He shared these images online, but they were quickly deleted, and he then vanished without a trace. However, several individuals were able to download the pictures before they were removed. Despite these proofs, the government has since claimed that the images were fake. Recently, Joe Biden made a huge mistake. One day, while browsing through some of the CIA's most important documents, he suddenly fell asleep. During his nap, an intruder entered the White House through a window and managed to access the documents on his computer. And their content will shock you. They revealed the CIA's plan to delete Jeffrey's images because they actually revealed the truth about the mysterious airport and its hidden secrets. Furthermore, the documents showed that the CIA was responsible for Jeffrey Donson's disappearance.
Jackson, also known as the King of Pop, was one of the most popular singers, songwriters, and dancers of the 20th century. Made famous by his voice, songs, and the also famous moonwalk, he became an all-time favorite amongst society. On June 25th, 2009, less than 3 weeks before his This Is It show, Michael Jackson died from cardiac arrest in his home after being given various medications by his personal physician, Conrad Murray. However, the video you are seeing now was taken on the same day of Michael Jackson's death, which shows what looks to be the famous pop star being escorted out of a coroner's van into a secluded area. Some might say that this happened before his death, but officials pronounced him dead at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time, and this video was taken at night that same day.
It was no accident or mistake that the Titanic sank in 1912. You think all the richest people in the world on the world's safest boat dying in a single boating crash was an accident? There's not a chance. Basically, all of the world's elites at the time had already purchased tickets and were scheduled to take this cruise together. You're talking about the Rothschilds, the JP Morgans, and Mr. Astor, who was the richest American at that time. He owned nearly 40% of every mortgage in America at that time. The story goes that the Rothschilds wanted to create a central bank, but Mr. Astor and many of his extremely rich friends, who basically controlled the country and all of its politicians, opposed the central banking system, and they would never allow a central bank in America. So when all the world's richest people boarded the ship right before the boat took off, the Rothschilds and JP Morgans all exited the ship just minutes before takeoff. So now all of the richest people who opposed the central banking system ended up dying from an iceberg. And now that all of the rich people who opposed it are dead and no longer paying or bribing all of their politicians ended up working for the Rothschilds and JP Morgans instead, who were still alive and able to bribe them without any opposition now. The very next year, in 1913, they started the Federal Reserve Bank with almost zero opposition. Crazy conspiracy theory or TikTok fact? Let me know your own thoughts in the comments.
Is the answer to one of the most brutal, unsolved murders of all time Katy Perry? Is she actually murdered child pageant star JonBenet Ramsey?
Well, blink twice if you're really JonBenet Ramsey.
Wait, no.
Theorist Dave Johnson started this conspiracy because he claims he knows from sources close to the crime that JonBenet, who happens to look a lot like Katy Perry, was never murdered and it was all a lie. The theory goes that JonBenet's parents faked her death and the ransom note because they wanted to get her away from the child pageant scene because she already had a few known creepy men fixating on her, P-words, and people trying to take advantage of her and wanted to use her talent and star quality when she was older. Even their parents look eerily similar if they just got older and aged a bit. How does this photo look like both of them at the same time? To throw people off her scent because Katy would insinuate that people would compare her to JonBenet when she was younger, she for some reason made it clear that she was no stage kid and JonBenet Ramsey wasn't waiting to burst out of her. They would both be in their 30s right now and they would both primarily sing Christian music, and a lot of people say maybe they can't find the culprit to the murder because it never happened. Before I share what Katy Perry has to say about this, make sure you heard the craziest conspiracy theory about Ellen DeGeneres that is so dark, especially after what they found in her house. As you know, Ellen has been described as an evil and devilish person to work with at The Ellen Show. Staff would describe their experience working with her as being ran by intimidation, fear, bullying, allegations that employees were being SA'd and touched by higher-level executives, and Ellen knew about it. While hosting her show, Ellen was also tied to the Illuminati after repeatedly flashing the symbol. It's also interesting that her set matches the building on Epstein Island with white and blue stripes, gold touches, and palm trees. She's been frequently closely tied to the lizard person conspiracy theory. Even her home staff described her as evil and would say that her true personality comes out at home, and it's worse than anything you've heard she's done at work. Look closely at this video of Ellen at home because it could expose evil and devilish parts of her private life. If you saw in the background of that video, through the glare of the window, you can see this painting that says evil thoughts and it's a devil's face. The artist who made that painting, who's been dead for a long time, painted a lot of Satan worshipping pieces. Not to mention this symbolism directly on her sweatshirt while she's broadcasting. Then look at another photo of Ellen sitting in her house with a painting in the background with suspicious symbols on them that are eerily similar to symbols you use in satanic worshipping rituals. The scariest one of all these is of Ellen giving her mother a haircut, and look closely at the painting behind her. I believe it says R.I.P. on the bottom above her mother.
The darkest conspiracies in the world. The Mandela effect, a theory that suggests that our current reality has somehow been shifted into an alternate universe. Such evidence includes things like the Berenstain Bears being Berenstain Bears, fruit of the loom, with and without the cornucopia. Even the memory of Mandela dying in prison back in the 1980s versus 2013. Supposedly created by the CIA as a psyops. Are we really in an alternate reality?
Virus theory. This theory says that the Earth is an living organism, and the humans are the virus. It is easier to understand it if you compare it to the human body. If we get sick, we create antibodies to get rid of the virus. And in the same sense, the Earth creates its antibodies to get rid of the virus. Natural disasters, droughts, wildfires, all these things happen so that the Earth can clear itself from the plague that in this case are we.
Ross theory. Bob Ross was a famous painter on television. The theory claims that Bob Ross is actually a serial killer. It's because of one of his paintings. It's called Happy Little Accidents, which depicts an exact crime scene where 5 bodies were found. What do you think about this theory?
Conspiracy theories. The evolution theory is fake. This theory states that the meteor that killed the dinosaurs wasn't a meteor. It was a spacecraft that was full of humans that traveled through the universe to find a new planet. This would also explain why ancient civilizations like the Incas and Egyptians were so advanced, and would disprove the theory that human evolved from a fish, and that Darwin and all the schools just taught you some crap.
Conspiracy theories will ruin your childhood. This first theory is about the movie Frozen and how some people believe it was created as a cover-up for how Walt Disney was cryogenically frozen and plans to be brought back to life. Because now if you search up the words Frozen and Disney, you'll only see results from the movie. But before the movie existed, you could find more information about how Walt Disney cryogenically froze himself. It's even rumored that Walt Disney's body is hidden somewhere in Disney World. But believe it or not, this next theory is even crazier. And it's how Tom and Jerry is actually World War II propaganda. So first of all, we have to point out that the nickname for British soldiers during World War II were Tommies, and the nickname for German soldiers were Jerrys. And in almost every episode of Tom and Jerry, Tom tries to unalive Jerry, but Jerry outsmarts him, which, going by the Tommies and Jerrys association, could be a message about German intelligence. But if you still don't believe me, Tom and Jerry came out in 1940, the same year as the Battle of Britain. Let me know if you believe these theories and follow for more.
Not actually the North Pole. The North Pole's been sailed every year for 30 years. It's off from the North Pole several hundred miles. This is in a region that's never been sailed before. It's between the magnetic North Pole and the actual North Pole. The waters are reported to be the roughest on the planet, so we're talking 10-story seas. This is not going to be a pleasure cruise by any stretch of the imagination. We'll be breaking ice for 8 days to get there, so it's not an easy place to get to.
Conspiracy is that the government was taking dead bodies, like limbs and tissues, to test out what would happen if a radioactive fallout would happen. Yeah. So it was true. The government actually took like 1,000 bodies of dead babies and just like dead people, random people bodies, without the consent of the people's
from
families.
like the hospitals and stuff.
Yeah, and like the Graves family.
Yeah.
So they took that and they tested it on them, and people found out. The parents were pissed because this is an infant's body that they're taking.
And what did they find out? They just used it?
Yeah, they used it as research for the Sunshine Project. Yeah. It's fun. The government is hiding a lot of shit.
You have a conspiracy theory that turned out to be true?
It's hard to say whether it turned out to be true, but JFK is the biggest one.
And where did you land on that?
I landed on that. It's very possible that Lee Harvey Oswald was involved. It's very possible that other people were involved too. It's very possible that he shot at Kennedy and other people shot at Kennedy at the same time, and that he was a patsy and he was put up. Like, he was obviously involved in a lot of intelligence agency shenanigans. He went to Russia, he married a Russian woman, came back to the United States. He had been involved in all sorts of communist propaganda shit. He was definitely not like an above ground guy. He was a shady dude. Yeah. And it's entirely possible that he was one person out of a plot to kill the president, and they put it all on him, and they had Jack Ruby shoot him. But everybody goes black and white on that. You either go Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, or you go he was innocent and the CIA had him assassinated because he was trying to get rid of the CIA, which he was. I mean, Kennedy was trying to pull us out of Vietnam, he was trying to get rid of the CIA, he was trying to get rid of the Federal Reserve. There was a lot of like super controversial ideas that Kennedy was trying to push forward, and someone killed him.